You're watching E.T.N. Share and subscribe.
Hey guys, welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. This is Rob. This video, we're going to do a spoiler review slash discussion, more like a discussion regarding Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, first thing I want to say, I kind of want to try and pick up from my last video where I was talking about some of the issues in the movie that I had that I didn't really want to get into because it was spoiler territory. Probably my biggest issue with this movie is they really need to separate Stark from Spider-Man. If you're a hardcore Spider-Man fan, and I don't even consider myself hardcore, I consider myself, I'm more of a hardcore Wolverine fan. That was always my number one favorite character, but I'm enough of a Spider-Man fan to know that you got to get to a point where this Spider-Man stands on his own 2 feet. I understand the connection, the bond they had. I understand the well-written story regarding Peter and Tony. But Tony was all over this movie. Like, it didn't even make sense how much he was all over this movie because, like, you would go through the movie and you see all these murals regarding the Endgame, and they call it the blip now. That's what it was called. They explain exactly what happened to the students that were there and the students that didn't get blipped out and stuff like that. It's pretty simple, really. A lot of people have already figured it out. But everywhere you go in this movie, pretty much, not everywhere, but you'll see, and not only in like New York, like you'll see scenes where Tom Holland, or rather Spider-Man's walking around, Peter Parker, and you see a mural of Iron Man or Tony Stark. You've seen it in the trailers, the one where he's sitting on the ledge and there's a big Iron Man graffiti painting next to him. Well, you kind of see that spread out throughout the movie, and it really felt forced. It really felt forced because you see it in such these pivotal moments, like reminding you, Tony, and it's like I understand the connection there. They're trying to hit home how much the loss of Tony is affecting Peter, but it makes it look like a try-hard when you're just having Tony, because he wasn't the only one that sacrificed everything in Endgame. Why not a mural of Cap or a mural of other people who were there that maybe are not around anymore, even if they're alive, like Thor? So, like, it was really forced. And it's like, I like Iron Man. I mean, and obviously Robert Downey Jr. just did a great job. And I think I kind of felt watching this movie almost like Marvel's fearing the idea of moving on without Tony Stark, without Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr. That's the feeling I got. And I don't want to feel that, because if you're going to put Tom Holland and Spider-Man in the forefront, which they may not be doing, and you can't blame them if they don't, because what are you going to do when Sony wants him back? But that seems to be what they're trying to portray in this movie. And if you're going to put him in the forefront, you cannot talk about Spider-Man being the next Spider-Man or being the next Iron Man. He has to be the first Spider-Man. And that's one of my biggest criticisms of this movie. It doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the movie at all. Don't get me wrong. But there's a time where you want to emphasize the relationship and the loss and the mourning that Peter Parker must be enduring with the loss of Tony. But to me, it kind of takes away a little bit from his growth, because he can be his own person. You know, I just kind of felt like certain areas it was forced. Hopefully they kind of move on from that. If we want to focus on Peter Parker mourning, then I think they should have had a specific scene regarding that. And I guess to some extent they do, but I really didn't feel like it was a mourning period, more than just feeling the weight on his shoulders of becoming the next Iron Man. And I just don't think he needs to become the next Iron Man. I think he needs to become the first Spider-Man. With that said, then we go on to Mysterio. Now, this is the other part of the movie that I think some people are going to have a problem with, especially hardcore Spider-Man book fans. I understood why they did what they did. And basically what it is about Mysterio in this movie is, obviously he's a villain. You know, you guys know that by now. Spoiler. But it's a very different way of executing Mysterio than it was like in the show or in the comics. Now, it didn't bother me so much because they had a sequence involving Mysterio using his illusion powers to really fuck with Spider-Man in this movie, and it was so good. It reminded me of the cartoon, those certain episodes or certain, I don't remember exactly the episode or their names, but there were very similar scenes where it's almost like Spider-Man's going down a rabbit hole of different illusions that are just fucking with his head. And this kind of almost brings back, I don't know what they did with this. This is where I got a little confused. But his Spidey sense is emphasized in this movie more than several times. In fact, they used a comedy. It used it as a comedy trope. Like in the beginning of the movie, Aunt May she refers to it as his Peter tingle, which was just hilarious because she tossed a banana at him and he didn't react to it. He just kind of hit him on the head. And that's kind of some of the parallel that happened with Spider-Man 2, where the less and less motivated Peter is to be Spider-Man, it's almost like it affects his powers. So there was some of that in this movie too, not to a greater degree like in Spider-Man 2, and it wasn't really referred to other than his Spidey sense. Now, later on in the movie, he gets it back, obviously, or he starts harnessing it to take out Mysterio. But anyway, in terms of Mysterio, I think Jay Gyllenhaal is so good that the differences and the changes they made with the Mysterio character in terms of having a whole team of former former Stark Industry employees that helped him harness the technology that he got from from Spider-Man to enhance his illusion technology, because it was technology. It wasn't like, and the whole thing about him being in like, he has a motion capture suit with a dome where he's off somewhere where nobody can see him and he's controlling his own illusion of being Mysterio. He does have an actual suit that he gets into for more closer encounters, but so now in terms of the technology, he gets the technology from Peter, who's wearing these glasses that were given to him by Tony Stark. These are the glasses you might remember that he's had on multiple times in the movies, where he touches the side of it and there's like certain technology. So he gives these glasses that pretty much give Peter Parker the power to he can call a drone strike on somebody, which he almost killed one of his own classmates. That was crazy. And what happened was he kind of misunderstood the message that Tony left him when he gave him the glasses. So when Tony leaves him the glasses, he tells him, "Hey, look, this is for the next Iron Man," or whatever the case may be. At first, you kind of think, "Oh, it's Peter Parker," and then later on, as Quentin Beck generates trust in Peter says, "Wait a minute, this is for the next Iron Man. You're like the next Iron Man. These are for you," and pretty much hands over these glasses to Quentin. And then that's the reveal that's when Mysterio comes out and he's like, "Oh yeah," and and then you see his illusion starts to kind of diminish, and you see his crew, and he's got a crew of 10 people that operate some of the so it's different, but it still works in my opinion. I think when you look back to the Mysterio from the comics and the TV show, and you try to put that one Mysterio into this movie regards to what he's doing and how real it is, they did a good job of explaining how it seems so real and how it can be very dangerous, because he's using these drones, Stark drones, that come from the satellite, and the drones have the cameras to make the illusions, but they also are armed with weapons. So the drones cloak, they shoot the illusions come out, and the reason the illusions do damage or cause damage or can even kill people is because when the drones are manipulating the movement of the illusion, they're also firing weapons, which are simulating the damage, but it's real weaponry. It can really kill you. So I thought it was a clever way to do it without making, because you think about it in the movie, man, how would he do all that by himself? Do the illusion, actually be able to cause damage and things of that nature. I think they did a good job. I don't think everybody's going to be a fan of it, but it is what it is. I just think when you look back at the Mysterio from the comics and the Mysterio from the cartoon and what like that, I think it would have been very hard to convince people that this one man was doing all this shit. So that's that. Now, Jake Gyllenhaal was fantastic. I'm trying to think of other spoilers. Like I said, the issue with Tony Stark, I talked about that already. I think they're just weighing too heavily on Tony Stark in these Spider-Man movies. These Spider-Man movies need to be their own. It needs to be about Spider-Man. And I understand Tony Stark is the golden boy of the MCU and all that. But if you want to let him go and move on, the sooner you let him go, the better, in my opinion. Because you can't keep going to that well too many times. People know he's dead already. And even though we know all these characters come back in the comics, doing that in the movies would diminish the emotional attachment. So I say let him go. You know, I think if they would have done it early in the movie and then later on in the movie, there's no reference to Tony anymore, that would have been great. In this movie, it's throughout the whole movie, and it gets a little taxing at times, especially when you want to see Spider-Man grow on his own. With that said, he does grow on his own towards the end. It's still Tony influenced, but nonetheless, you see some growth there, and he manages to utilize his spider sense to kind of figure out how he gets through the illusions. You guys will love the illusion sequence that Mysterio puts him through. It is so reminiscent of the comics or the cartoon from the early 90s that you're gonna love it. It was such a great scene. Now, moving on to the end credits. I think I covered most of the spoilers. If you care about the love story and all that, obviously she finds out, he tells her, because MJ happened to be at a scene where basically Nick Fury was manipulating the whole trip, the whole vacation. So anywhere Peter went, or anywhere Peter was trying to avoid, he would send him to where the next elemental was going to be. Basically, the story that Quentin Beck gave them was that he knew where the elementals were going to pop up because it's where they popped up in his old world. There is no multiverse. I'm pretty sure some people are going to be disappointed about that. There isn't any multiverse. That doesn't mean it won't come up again at some point in the future. But basically, Quentin Beck gave him a line of shit. There is no multiverse. He did it basically because he knew they would believe it after what happened in Endgame. So that might disappoint some people. So Quentin Beck summoned the fire elemental, which was supposed to be the strongest one of them all. And basically, Spider-Man accidentally, unbeknownst, webbed one of the illusion cams and flung it out. He didn't know initially that he did it, but MJ saw it hit the ground and she actually collected it. And that's how they figured out Quentin Beck was full of shit. So I think that's probably the only other spoiler that's significant to the movie. Now going to the end credit scene. So the end credit scene, the end of the movie was really cute. Basically Peter Parker goes on a little date with MJ, and he shows up in his Spider-Man uniform, his new Spider-Man uniform, which he kind of created in the Quinjet with the technology with Stark Tech. But he built it his own, which I liked. He used his own smarts to kind of combine certain things about both suits that he liked, and he put them together. Now, it looks black on TV, but it's actually the dark navy blue suit, which is my favorite Spidey suit. But instead of the back being black, it's got the white, like the PS4 game, the white spider in the back. So even though it looks black, which I thought it was black, it's actually like a dark navy blue, because when they show him close up, you can see it's like a dark navy blue, which I was cool with because I like the dark navy blue suit with the red and all that. So anyway, so he's at the end of the movie, they show him swinging through the city. He's texting him, and it's great. This is one of the things I miss about these last two Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man swinging through the city. It's one of the things I love most about the Sam Raimi series, because Sam Raimi did a lot of that in all three movies. Was Spider-Man you probably hear my cat, was this Spider-Man going through the city flinging. So the end sequence is very, very much of that, which really gave me like, oh, I love that. Sometimes I'll play the PS4 game just to do that. He swings through, and he picks up MJ, takes her swinging, and then the end credits roll. About 5 minutes later, the credits stop. We see Peter drop off MJ, and she's like, I'm never doing that again. Then there's breaking news on basically a big Titantron against Madison Square Garden, and it's Quentin Beck saying, oh, I know who is the real Spider-Man and blah, blah, blah. And they show a clip of a scene that happened during their fight where those glasses that Tony have there, an AI called Edith, ask Peter, do you want to execute all the drones? And Peter says yes, which is basically dismissed all the drones back into space. But Quentin Beck cut the video in such a way that made it sound like Peter was saying execute the people, including Quentin Beck. And then Quentin Beck says, I know who Spider-Man is. And then he shows Peter Parker's face on the Titantron. And then, yep, Jonah Jameson. Yes, so J.K. Simmons. Yes, J.K. Simmons is returning as James Jonah Jameson. You wouldn't believe it. It was just an incredible thing. So then the credits roll again, of course, and then we get to the very end credit scene. And it's Maria Hill and Samuel L. Jackson. They're driving in an SUV. They're talking, and then next thing you know, Maria Hill turns into a Skrull, and so does Nick Fury. And then this is why Nick Fury told Spider-Man, don't invoke her name when he mentioned Captain Marvel. So, yeah. So then the Skrull's on the phone. He's talking about, yeah, you know, kind of almost went south, but, you know, we pulled it out, this and that. And then he's talking to the real Nick Fury, who's like sitting on a beach, drinking, having a drink. And then you find out he hits a button. It's like a hologram. And then he goes back. He's like in shorts and he's walking in this big base that looks like another, like, it looks similar to the Avengers base, but it's not. And the base are full of Skrulls. And then he's like, can somebody find my pants? And then it cuts away. So, yeah. So we kind of know where they're going. It looks like they're going to go in that direction. Now it's kind of out there that these guys can be anybody, because there was no indication throughout the movie that Nick Fury was ever a Skrull, but he was. And you could, I guess when you look back at it now, there were certain things Nick Fury was doing that weren't very Nick Fury-esque. Like, he was always riding Peter's ass. Where if you look back at some of the other movies with Nick Fury, he's more encouraging. He's more motivating. This Nick Fury wasn't like that. This Nick Fury was like, yeah, you know, you little punk guy. You don't ghost Nick Fury. So when you look back at it after the movie, you're like, yeah, I guess that really wasn't Nick Fury. He wasn't. There were subtle things about his personality that you really couldn't tell. So, but anyway, guys, I think that pretty much covers it. Those are at least the big spoilers. And hopefully you enjoy the movie. I know, like I said, there'll be some people who won't like certain elements, especially if you're really, really a hardcore Spider-Man fan. But otherwise, I still think it's a fun movie. Go check it out. The end credit scenes alone are worth the price of admission. And yeah, that's that. Anyway, that's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new here and you made it to the end of the video, please subscribe and like this video. Definitely share it with some others who are interested in seeing this movie and they don't mind spoilers, or you can also share the normal review, and I will see you guys on the next video. This is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Take it easy.
Thank you for watching E.T.N. Click here to watch more content. Don't forget to leave a comment. Also, make sure you like and share this video. If you want to know when the next video is up, click the notification bell next to the subscribe button. And most of all, make sure to click that subscribe button for regular content.